13 Questions by Man Transcending. Manhood in the Digital Age.
This episode, we are joined by Paul Unslaved. But before we get into that, Adam, we just got done doing the interview. First of all, how are you, and what were your impressions?
Good. I learned a ton of new vernacular. I'm constantly blown away by my inability to understand. One of the ones that you pointed out to me a long time ago was mourning. Mourning also contains mourn. It's not just, the rising, the beginning of the day. And Paul brought up, it seems like dozens, but, at least a good half dozen solid new examples of that in my mind in ways that I was using words. The one that stands out the most is universe. Universe to me was just a singular word, but no, verse. It's one verse, a single verse. And that completely changes the entire description of, it's just one thing, but no, it's, and that just, also then brings in biblical connotations, and it adds so many layers to the language. So that's what's sticking in my head the most from this episode is it's kind of like when you're in school and you figure out, just a new word and what it means. It's like, well, I've known these words for almost 40 years, and now I'm just kind of figuring them out again.
Yeah, it makes it exciting. It makes learning fun again, right?
And it's meaningful. It's meaningful because, words are magic. Words mean things. Words do things. It's vibrations. People listen to them. They have ideas about what those things are. Mantras work. So, I think it is important to know what you say, because when you ask somebody or tell somebody something, really, it's what is our understanding of that thought. So the better that we understand it, and especially like that, the universe, come on, that's...
Yeah, and the breakdown of words is so much more applicable, and I don't know if fun's the right word, but when you apply it to like the in context of the courtroom and law, and because I guess there's a trend now with studying law and what it means to be a citizen and person, and what are these all cap letters of your name. So breaking down the words and getting into etymology really makes it more digestible. So can definitely appreciate that about the episode. But so that's what kind of, speaking about how I stumbled across the guest, like I was saying, like this whole trend of natural law, like sovereign citizen isn't the right word, but there seems to be an uptick in interest in this topic. And it's one I've been kind of following on and off more or less for the last few years of my life. So I've heard a number of people talk on the subject, and I asked Paul to come on because I just appreciate his particular flavor that he gives to that topic in particular, regarding laws and courts and lawyers and judges and whatnot.
Well, it's essentially more people being aware of the contracts and the cages that those are, put upon us. And, people understanding you're born into the system, and more people are just becoming aware of that and what that means. And when you truly think about, what it is just to be a human being and to be able to survive in the world, and then to realize so much of our existence in this world today is no longer based on that natural system. It's built on, contracts and documents that were, written and put on paper. It's, it's very refreshing to see more and more people, just opening up to those ideas.
Yeah, because it's a reminder of everything really is consent based, and I think it's empowering
Mhm.
because it reminds us of our true place in the universe and who we really are. I'd like to think.
Well, yeah, this harkens back to something we've talked about before. When I go to the supermarket and I see it's raining and people are waiting outside for it to stop, and on principle, I'm going to go out no matter what, because what did you do before roofs and umbrellas and cars that could get you from one place to another with a completely climate controlled, heat the air up, warm you off on your way there type of system. And I kind of see this in the same type of that vein of, you don't need, these documents and these systems to survive. It should not be a requirement to survive. There's a much simpler world, and, people not wanting to agree with systems like that. I mean, I don't know. It's a very empowering on a natural, very base humanistic level. And I don't know. I respect it. I love it. I love that more people are just open to the idea that although there are systems and rules that will punish you and say different, you're a human and you have the rights to do certain things, regardless of what's written on paper.
Yeah, and speaking of empowerment and empowering things, do we have the gratitude jingle to
We
get-
do, and I will use my powered computer to empower this jingle. Gratitude, 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 oh, gratitude. Gratitude, 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 oh, gratitude.
You want to go first this time?
Sure.
I had mine
So,
written-
what's that?
I was just going to say I had mine written down, but I changed it at the last moment. So
Easy. Mine's super easy tonight. My gratitude harkens back to the very beginning and to this guest and to legitimately one of my favorite things in life. It happened a week ago, and I was mesmerized by myself with this thought of dismemberment being part of remember. That when you member something, it's because dismember to me never had anything to do with remembering something in thought. It had to do with body parts coming off or apart. And so that just really fundamentally changed my understanding of the word remember and what it means to put thoughts together and what memory is. So that concept and understanding it from a physical body damage standpoint. Point is, same thing. This episode, so many times during the episode, over and over and over, I was just checking my head and going, I did not know that. Or, I like, it makes logical sense. How didn't I see that? So my gratitude is it's not that these things are hidden. I wish I certainly would have access to them more, but essentially it's that there is such richness built into language that although a word can be uniquely descriptive, that word can be broken down to describe concepts that it's hidden knowledge to me, I guess, because it was there in plain sight and I needed a little bit more context to break that knowledge free. So I am grateful for that context.
yeah, we de-occulted it, right? Cult is hidden. Occult, OCC cult, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, learning is fun. Speaking of learning, that kind of ties into my gratitude because my gratitude has to deal with a book club that you may or may not remember a past guest talking about. Owen Hunt is putting on a book club for reality transurfing by Vadum Zealand. And the book is as thick, if not thicker than a Bible, but it's super fun to read. It's not too like heady and highbrow, I don't think, in my opinion. So I'm just really having a really good time doing a book club, because the last time I did a book club, I'm excited because to see what happens, what comes about. Because the last time I did a book club, it was with Darren Grimes, Grammarica, and we were doing the Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday. And that was just shortly a few months before, you and I started doing 13 questions together. So book clubs seem to bring about good things.
Interesting.
So to be in another one. And the book is great. Like it's connecting so many dots. So I would recommend that to any listener out there.
When did you start this book club?
First of the year. Well, Owen started it
Interesting.
January 1st. I missed the first 2 sessions. It's Monday nights. So last session, the third one was the first one I actually got to sit in on. But yeah, it's been fun so far. So I'm grateful for what Owen's doing, because it's a great book and good messages. And the more people out there spreading good stuff, the better we're all going to be, right? The better off we'll be.
I like it.
So yeah, that book is, by the way, listed on our website, 13questionspodcast.com, underneath the question 3 book catalog. It is a, how would you describe it? A living list of answers to question 3, which is what is the most influential book on your life? So we've been curating the answers given by every guest on the show, and it is all compiled there neatly for you in list format on our website. And also for your convenience, we have links available to Amazon if you would like to purchase a hard copy or an Audible copy or what have you. But all of those, if you click through and do buy through Amazon, you will be supporting the show that way. Other ways to support the show that we kind of we didn't touch on specifically in the interview, but we talked about applicable wisdom or applied knowledge, and something that we haven't really talked about too much in the last few episodes, but we still have available and on the website. And I'd like to think of these as a form of applicable knowledge or applicable wisdom is our affiliate links. We've got, of course, we still have the Shungite link. Adam and I, Shungite is a mineral provided by Derek Condit through Mystical Wares store. Derek is a past guest on episode 50. He's a great guy. I talk with him fairly regularly, so we stay in touch. And so if you're interested in Shungite or learning more about what Derek's all about, definitely check out episode 50 of 13 Questions, or just click through the affiliate link on the website and take a look at his page or his Mystical Wares store. And the other affiliate link that we have up there right now is from Mark Sloan, and he does the red light therapy, which is something that I have experience with personally, using with my skin condition. I believe Mark's episode is 78, so definitely go check that out if you haven't, and buy a red light if you want to, if you're in the market. If not, support the show just by telling somebody about it. Right, Adam? Time, talent, treasure. Or, yeah, time and talent.
Time, talent, treasure. Most important thing you can do is word of mouth. Especially out in these worlds getting kicked off of platforms, means we're doing something right.
Oh, yeah. That's something else that we could talk about. We actually got a strike on our YouTube channel the other day, didn't we?
Yes, we did. But, so is life. We don't need other systems to tell us what we can and can't do. All we need to do is have an RSS feed, which means we have the ability to get to you. We have a website, And they haven't shut those down. They're still out there. So even if we get deplatformed, kicked off of everything out there, as long as you out there still have those two things and still tell your friends, then we're here. You still got us. Still find us. Water your garden.
Yeah. Support any way that you see fit. Leave review, tell a friend. We do have a donation option available on the website via PayPal if that is the easiest way for you to show value. I don't think we've got any more housekeeping business to get through. Can you think of anything?
No, I think that's pretty much it. This was a great episode. Really powerful guest. Bill, certainly you guys jived and jammed, and this thing just flowed. So I hope you guys do enjoy it. It was certainly one that I enjoyed. Runs a little long in all the good ways. So sit back, strap in, and let us know what you think. 13 questions podcast at gmail.com.
So yeah, this was a little bit of a longer conversation, and we jump right into the deep end, like right off the bat in question one. So yeah, let us know what you think. Tell your friends. Spread the love. This is 13 Questions with Paul Unslaved. Paul, you mentioned that you had a live stream that you were going to do in lieu of the show. Is that something you do on like a regular basis?
Yeah, pretty semi regularly at this point.
Okay.
I do a live. I pretty much go on for about 2 or 3 hours with the viewers, I guess you would call it. We kind of either they throw stuff at me and I kind of go off on it for a little bit, and it's very sort of crude and rough around the edges. But for now it's interesting for me. I enjoy it. I think some other people enjoy it. So
Awesome. All right. Well, let's get into it. Question number one. What was the best advice ever given to you, and would you modify it at all today?
I'm gonna have to go cliche on that one. To a degree. Stay true to yourself. You know, um, and kind of like a little bit of a, I guess, caveat to that. The only thing to fear is fear itself. That's not really an advice, but it's a very sort of simplistic, cliche, boiled down version of what I've dealt with in my life. Fear and myself and my fear have been my biggest sort of enemy, I guess, if you want to put it that way, right? My biggest impediment to forward movement and progress and, self work.
Would you modify it at all today then, or?
No, I mean, what I've come to now, and again, I don't look at any of this information that any of us speak about or live as ours, but I've kind of, developed, I guess, lately a sort of cliche of my own, right? Faithful over fearful, so that's what I sort of cling to. Um, that's how I guess if you want to say if I've modified it, that's how I've modified it. Anytime that I am in an uncomfortable, awkward, fearful place, I just have faith in doing the next right thing, right? Surrendering the rest.
I have an interesting follow-up question. This gets a little bit philosophical, but so when you say stay true to yourself, I guess how would you define the self as opposed to say like the ego or what have you?
I think that you have to kind of sit with the self and experience with self-consciousness and awareness, inhabiting this flesh suit, right? Because from my perspective, what I've experienced in the past, leaving my body, consciousness and awareness doesn't have the same quality it does outside of the body as it does within the body. So, sitting with self, observing self day to day, and how self acts out, in the body, in the mind, in the emotions, and then getting a baseline, sort of a balance, a middle ground of learning who and what you are. You know, um, really the heart, is a big part of it. Care, is always what I have to come back to. Um, Everything is kind of rooted in care. Some people will call it love, I guess. Love is, the answer, as they say, but I choose to call it care because I think that the love word has kind of been, I don't know, twisted in a sense. So, yeah, I mean, a big part of self to me would be, what's really needed versus what I want and don't want. What do I really care about as far as, you know, now and going into the future? And to me, it's kind of all one moment. It's all one thing, right? There's a set of sort of principles, right? I guess this is where we get back to words and terms. There's a set of principles, at the top of the list, rights and freedom. That's why law, to me, it all ties in. This idea of spiritual search and the common law and knowing the self and, caring for self, right? Self-care, which is kind of more the new age version. It all goes together to me. It's the idea of we know we're given, by the universe, the ability to know right from wrong, um, what's true from what's false, if we would hone our discernment. Um, you know, that's that. So when you say ego to me, I mean, ego has different facets of it. It can be directed in a positive sense, I believe. But, one of the kind of dysfunctional facets of it is lying to yourself and others. So I try not to do that. I try to focus on, like I said, staying true to myself and to others, good, bad, or indifferent. There's a lot of times nowadays where I'm sort of reclusive. I'm just with myself. I don't really want to talk to many people. I have to kind of just stay true to that. I can't really be a yes man or pretend to be somebody I'm not, So, you know, go with what you feel at the time. And if it's not the right decision, you'll learn from it.
I like that you mentioned heart and care and love, because we do have a gratitude jingle that we do as part of our intro every episode now. And it's where Adam and I just share something that we're grateful for in order to generate that feeling. So happy to hear you mention.
That's a big part of it, right? Is that and again, one of the sort of themes I guess lately I've been on, my consciousness has come to or resonates with is this idea of one verse, the universe. We're all instruments that have to essentially, through experience and through cause and effect and working with ourselves, we have to tune our instrument to play with the one verse, that the orchestrator has created, right? The only way we can talk and understand certain concepts if there was one self, from what I see, right? Like this idea of we're all unique, we're all special. There's some truth to the idea of uniqueness, but this idea that we're all different, um, you know, to me, it doesn't wash with me. There's one creation, there's one life, one love, so to speak, like the Rasta talk about. There's different cultural understandings of this, but there's one truth, there's one life, there's one love, and we all connect when we're operating, to use I guess a commercial term for lack of a better term, when we're operating the self, from, like you said, a place of certain principles. We tend to align and resonate and connect with other beings doing the same, and then the experience is better for us, right? All the way around. It's more authentic, it's more fulfilling, it's more rewarding, there's more growth. Now, don't get me wrong, there's also going to be a fair amount of challenges and work to be done, right? But, that's again what makes a fulfilling and rewarding life. Like they say, nothing worth doing is worth doing without some challenge. I'm kind of butchering that phrase, but you get what I'm saying. Anything worth doing is going to have some difficulty to it.
For sure. You mentioned that you had an out of body experience. Is that something that you talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an open book as far as what I've experienced. And a lot of people don't like it, but part of the experience was drug related. I don't use drugs any longer, other than if people consider cannabis to be a drug, maybe a mushroom here or there. But yeah, some of these experiences I've had were due to usage of certain chemicals, and people will say, well, that's a hallucination. But then it begs the question, what is a hallucination and what is life if not just another hallucination, right? Because if I could take something, have that profound of an experience, then it begs the question, what are we doing in base consciousness? Because like they say in the Matrix, what is real if not a bunch of chemicals sort of moving around in our brain and creating a perception and an understanding and an experience? If you could change that to that radical of a degree. And again, this is a common experience, anecdotal experience, people leaving their body and feeling, what others describe as essentially just a peace, right? None of that sort of push pull, um, quality of the flesh, that attract, repel, push, pull, sort of, weighted down beingness, right? Quality to consciousness and awareness. Without that flesh, that wasn't present for me.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. We had a guest a couple episodes ago who did some design work for us. He designed some new logos, and he has his philosophy, I guess, he came up with is called simulation assumptionism, which is very akin to what is a hallucination, right? If we are living in a simulation, why not have the ability to experience other simulations concurrently? And if that is induced with hallucinogenics, so be it. And that can be in a positive aspect too, because as our last guest episode has yet to be released as of this recording, but he actually works for the Heroic Hearts Foundation over in the UK, and they use psychedelics to help soldiers recover from PTSD syndrome or PTSD. So yeah.
Sure. I mean, you're seeing now in a lot of these clinics, they're using drugs that we were using, ketamine, sort of PCP derivatives. I mean, you just have the same sort of cycles going on over and over again, it appears to me, in just different forms, right? These chemicals are just derivatives of the same things that people took back in the day, thousands of years ago, and sort of had an awakening experience, right? Or just a consciousness change that was so profound in their nervous system, right? Just that nervous system, sort of flood, right? When something is that severe impingement on the nervous system, it tends to change the individual long term. So there's definitely an idea of a lot of things here being a tool, and we can't come to understand how it all works because it's either billed as the panacea and the savior, or it's billed as Satan and the destroyer, and it's the worst thing ever, right? So we're back to sort of authentic experience. With that said, I don't really push the usage of drugs on the street, and this is kind of how ridiculous it all is we have a whole system of institutions that seeks to criminalize behavior that's going to go on anyway, and everyone knows that. And it doesn't allow for people to have authentic experience, right, wrong, or indifferent, right? Everybody has the ability, I think Terence McKenna kind of said it best, the ability to explore one's consciousness with different chemicals is like the same kind of rite of passage as the ability to explore your own sexuality. I mean, and then we have the sort of the parallel there, the ironic joke of, if the government could make sex illegal, they would, so now we're kind of coming back around where it's interesting. I guess it's all being accepted and pushed, but there's a middle ground for me of sort of tools and experiences, and then also reverence to higher consciousness rather than these substances, right? I think the substances are just tools to get us pointed toward higher consciousness, right? But not everybody needs that necessarily. I think there's many different ways to the way. That's just one of them. Happens to be a very powerful one for a lot of people and maybe necessary, when the ego is so toxified and has all these defense mechanisms, maybe a powerful jungle experience is what a lot of folks in the Western world need, whether it's ayahuasca or psilocybin or different just sort of consciousness changing compounds that allow you to kind of reset. Even MDMA at one point for me. Again, I don't agree because now everything's being dosed and poisoned. So I don't agree with getting this stuff on the street, but yeah, the MDMA experience for me, just unlocking that level of love or compassion, right? That I didn't really have much experience with before that. That can be a life-changing experience to someone who's never felt love, which at one point I was in that category, right? I never felt love really, to that level, if at all.
Oh, yeah. We kind of jumped into the deep end right off the bat. First question. It's good.
It always happens that way with me, man. I don't even look at the questions because I'm like, I know it's going to go left. And then I look at them for 3 seconds before we come on. I'm like, my mind's already going to 10 different places. I'm like, forget it. We'll jump right into it and take it where it goes.
That's awesome. Adam, did you have any comment before we move on to question 2?
Nope.
All right. All right. Question 2. What do you willfully ignore?
Willfully ignore. That's a good one. Well, I tend not to engage in ignorance at all, but I guess if I had to put, something in that type of category, it would be doubts for myself and others. Just general sort of negative energies that can only seek to divide me from self and others, right? There was a time where I existed in that space. I almost needed a controversy to substantiate my existence. I know a lot of folks and a lot of institutions and sort of dynamics like that, the whole left-right paradigm. So for me, I ignore anything that takes me away from self and higher consciousness and care, any kind of worldly, just lower level nonsense, what I perceive to be worldly, lower level nonsense. A lot of this pop culture stuff, I willfully ignore it. I don't care. I don't care about Lady Gaga's genitals. I don't care about Justin Bieber's latest, drug binge. I'm not saying he is. See, I'll get in trouble for that now. I'm not saying he is or isn't. I'm just saying you get what I'm saying, right? So there's not too many things I willfully ignore when it comes to interpersonal relationships, because I think you can learn something from everyone in every interaction. But yeah, stuff like that, I got no time for it. I got no energy. And this fear porn now. Everybody's woke and everybody's going to spread fear porn. And I get it. I was there at one point as well, but I got no time and energy for it anymore. Because what are we doing about it, right? What are we doing to change our world and therefore the world, right? It starts with self.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. Choosing not to tune to the lower level nonsense, those frequencies. I think that it speaks to one's ability to take personal responsibility for what enters in your brain, or what, because that kind of dictates what kind of signals you're receiving and are attuned to. And if you're stuck in those lower frequencies, then you're limited, right?
Yeah, and it's back to, what do we care about? What are we emulating? What are we mirroring? We have to stand back and look at that. When we're gossiping about other people and what they're up to in their bedroom or whatever else, again, just on the most basic level, it's a waste of our time, energy, and attention. Like, if you show me somebody who's got everything together, right? Like they're on the land, they own everything that they have, in the sense of it's not being regulated and taken from them. They're able to produce for themselves in a community, a lifestyle, resources, even if that's knowledge, but really growing food for yourself. You know what I'm saying? Completely empowered, self-sustainable, balanced individual. I guess if that person wants to go, look at that stuff, they could do that. I mean, people could do whatever they want. Obviously, I wouldn't stop them if I could. But to me, there's just not enough time in the day to be gossiping about other people. And I see so much of this now, even folks in the quote unquote truth community. I don't like these labels and terms, but they're dividing from each other now. Everybody's a shill, everybody's a mason, everybody's this and that. And it's like, dude, I willfully ignore all that because I'm not interested in what other men and women are doing and not doing. That's their judgment, right? We're all going to have to live out the consequences, each one of us, of what we've done and not done. So what do I care? I have no dog in that fight. I'm only responsible, like you said, responsible and accountable for what I do and don't do, right? When I'm focusing on somebody else, I'm way out of that process.
Yeah, the gossip thing just seems so easy to do online, especially with memes. So I like to post memes, right? So you could call me a shit poster back in the day, but I guess I don't know if that's applicable. I don't know if I'm using that term right or not, but
Yeah.
I find myself double checking myself before I share something, because I don't want to share anything that puts anybody in a negative light, even if that person is doing, negative things, just because I don't want to perpetuate that energy. So yeah, it's powerful stuff.
Well, part of our creature, right? I think like this is where we are, our programming, so to speak, our nature, dare I say it, because I don't necessarily think we have a nature other than being programmable. Maybe with certain things, we have impulses, but it's used against us, right? The more we have access to this stuff and it's being filtered through, our instrument, so to speak, right? Our consciousness in this body, when it's done a certain way, it opens up that door to us, right? And I just think the whole process is destructive, because we have to think back, right? Before all the devices, I love the word now, device of vice. Before all the devices, nobody was focused on what people were doing all the way somewhere where they've never been. Look at this person up there doing that, and look what all they got. You had enough issues with just dealing with your community. You know what I'm saying? Like, we become so disconnected from self and each other by focusing on stuff we have no control over, and all just to try to like compete, right? We've been brought up in this culture of competition equaling competence, right? Competence. The word is competence. Everyone thinks by competing, it shows competence. To me, it shows a lack of competence, because somebody who's competent, who's really an alpha, if you want to use these worldly sort of terms, they're not interested what anybody else is doing and not doing, because they don't have any control over it. And I bring it back to the serenity prayer, right? Change what you can change, understand what you can't change, and surrender the rest, right? That's how we get to peace and serenity. But most folks are so desperate and anxious and insecure within themselves, especially in times like this, right? As the finances go down the drain and everybody's losing everything, they're losing their mind. So now they have to divide from themselves and each other once again, and label and categorize and judge, because it's the only seeming power that they have, right? Everything else has become powerless, and that's all to me, by design, to give everybody a cult, sure, right? A culture, the root word is cult, where we're all focused on this, while this artificial reality, just like we're seeing meta come in now, while we lose our actual reality. That's the magic, right? Look at the right hand while the left hand is doing this.
Yeah, I forget who said it, but I think there's some quote that goes along the lines of "culture is not your friend."
That's Terrence McKenna.
Okay, no wonder.
Yeah.
Guy keeps popping up in our episodes.
Yeah, I mean, Terrence McKenna, if you listen to a lot of his long talks, right? He's got some perspective on some things, right? He's not wrong. I'm not saying like anybody, right away when you mention somebody, then he becomes the master, the guru, the savior. That's not what I'm saying. Anybody who I bring up or mention or maybe bring a quote from, they just have a perspective and an understanding that they've communicated accurately, articulately, that I can go along with, but it doesn't mean that I agree with them all the way by any means. Most folks, I could even bring up Alex Jones lately, because they're putting me, I guess, as people are seeing more, they get compared more, right? So I'm getting compared to people now on social media, and I just think it's fun and interesting, because it's flattering to me. I mean, if you want to compare me with people who are actually every single day putting in work, doing something to change themselves in the world, like, I'll sit in that camp, because none of us are perfect, right? But at least we're doing something. What is everyone else doing? Because I drive on the streets and the highways every day. 99% of people are slaved up and regulated, and they have no sort of plans on changing that, it seems. It's pretty sort of, it's disconcerting to me, to see so many folks, especially from the world I'm in now, with this moving property without a license and plates and insurance and registration, to really comprehend that they have every single person on the road completely bought into a lie. And even when you tell them, they go, nah, my fear is bigger than my faith and truth. And the cause and effect to me is more slavery, more genocide. Like, I don't see any way out of that, you know?
Yeah, we're all wrapped up in some pretty complex mind cages, and most people just don't even realize they're in the cage.
Absolutely. Birds born in a cage think flying is an illness. That's one of the quotes I love, right? It's just what we've done for so long that people can't envision a way out. When you give them the way out, they say that's extreme. You know, they're used to the institution. They're born into a mental institution. Regulation is just another day.
All right. Question number 3. What book has been most influential on your life and why?
So I'm going to redo the questions. I'm going to give you like 3 or 4 books because, you know, and there's probably even more than that, but I always kind of give the same few. I like the Tao Te Ching. I like the spiritual text, you know, the text that like people look to and maybe create whole religions around, but never seem to actually follow what was taught in the actual original teaching, which to me is always the sort of the mind blowers. Everyone claims to be an ist or an ism, and they never follow what the original premise is or the original teaching. You know, whether it's the Christian, the Buddhist, the Taoist, you know, even the scientist nowadays. They tell you trust the science, but the original scientist was about the scientific method, which is all about questioning everything till there's no more ability to question. You know, so this is sort of an epidemic nowadays. We even see it in the street. I'll take it down to the street level. You know, the sort of the gangs, right? The street culture has original rules and premises in those societies, in that underworld, whatever you want to call it, and nobody's following any of it anymore. We're just in an age of everybody thinking they're going to do whatever they want to do and be God and play God, and nobody's following any principles in any one of the fields that they're dominant in, you know? And that to me is just sort of evidence of a complete societal demoralization and decay from top to bottom, because nobody knows anymore what's right from wrong. All they know is a damn paycheck, and somebody's given them an outcome-based task, and they're going to complete that task, you know? And the folks who do rise to the top in their fields, who are honorable, who are trustworthy, who are respectable, they seem to be being flushed out of everywhere, right? Literally from the street level all the way to the top. Anybody who is any kind of reputable, the rest get together, right? Because it seems evil, which just means live backwards, spelled live backwards. Evil people seem to like to group up all throughout history to oppress good, honorable people, especially in dark times when they feel like their power is uncorruptible, right? Ironically, not uncorruptible, but you know, unquestionable. You know, they've come to a place of unquestionable power, and it's corrupted them, is what I'm meaning to say, right? Like they say, power corrupts absolutely. So the cash flow, and I went off on a whole ramble, but the cash flow has corrupted everybody, right? And now we're going to see a collapse of that system as well. But the 3 books, the Tao, the Dhammapada, right? Sayings of the Buddha, Meditations, Marcus Aurelius, any book like that. You know, obviously the Bible to a degree. I really like just certain kind of pieces of all these books. Revelation, you know, different sort of scriptures throughout the Bible. Because again, I don't ever take one thing as my whole gospel. I look at it and I see what's presented, and I kind of take what resonates with me, and I leave the rest.
I love Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Stoicism is one of my favorite topics. Just for, I don't know, listener edification, if in case people aren't aware, that book it's not a book, it's that guy's journal. So it wasn't really meant to be read as a book. So, like, just a note on, I don't know, journal making. It's something I have, you know, been trying to keep up with and get better at myself. I think that there's something to say about journaling for yourself. But yeah, I just think that it's interesting that this thing has become, that is someone's personal journal, right? Like, has become so like well read and known that, you know, it's
Yeah, what I like with that, right? What I like to do is, like you said earlier, create the experience where, for me, it's an audiobook, right, with a certain reader who has a certain sort of energy and tone about him and the way he reads. And then, like you said, writing down little things that resonate with you, and then it kind of gets stuck somewhere in your beingness, and you apply it and you work with it. That to me, I think, is a rewarding process, that audio. I mean, different people learn different ways, but for me, that was one of the more rewarding processes while I'm doing my work, and while I'm doing construction or whatever I was doing at the time. I kind of have the thing in my ear and I'm listening, and then at different times I'm kind of writing down different quotes and reflecting on them, and trying to incorporate it into my life, but see how it all fits.
yeah, and it starts to be fun too. Like if you start out with it and you think of it as a task or whatever, I know that can be challenging for some people, but once you get into it, to me, it's fun. So
Well, yeah, I mean, even just on the level of what's interesting to me is most folks, whether they're willing to admit it or not, I think humans in general have a part of them that I won't say lust for, but wants power, right? And there can be sort of a positive take on that if you understand that with great power comes great responsibility, right? So if you do want that and take that on, there's a lot that comes with that. But for folks that want to be better in their relationships, right, with themselves, with other people, the opposite sex, so to speak, I think a lot of this stuff kind of bleeds into, other areas where you have to create a version of self that's going to attract what you want in your life, the experiences, good, bad, or indifferent. Like when I created a self that I could respect, that was honor able, trustworthy, respect able, based in truth and principles, a lot comes with that. People are willing to support me and help me with certain resources and things, and different connections, and it feels like power, but also there's another side to that, right? Which is the responsibility, right? That they're going to come take my property from time to time and put me in a cage, and I'm going to have to go past my fear, but for me to like really love a woman or love my children and care about this world I live in, I have to be a man of principles. I mean, this to me is just common sense, no brainer at this point. If I don't want to go back to sticking myself with needles and hating myself and not respecting myself or be respected by others, I have to live by principles. So the outcome has to be damned. Whatever they do to me can't matter as much as who I am up until they do it to me.
all right, question number 4. What rule do you have for yourself that you never break, and why do you think that it's important?
I don't like to say anymore what I never do because I've said it before and was wrong. But you know, I try, and for the most part, really, I have been. I can't really say for the most part. After a certain point, I'll phrase it like that. After a certain point in my life, I decided that I was no longer going to deceive, right? Steal the truth out of a situation and try to keep somebody from making an informed decision in order to gain power. Right now, see, that goes back to what I was saying. I get my power a different way nowadays. And I also understand humbly that all power comes with responsibility and accountability. So, but yeah, no violence, even with my eating, I don't eat anything living, in the sense of was living and now had to be killed or harm or violence done to it to consume it. Right. So mostly nowadays I'm eating rice and beans and pastas and carbs. I'm a carbitarian nowadays, but it just kind of to me all goes along with the idea of not doing harm, right? Causing no harm. Uh, yeah. Lying and causing no harm, really, and that kind of spans the whole thing, stealing, lying, the whole, treat others how you want to be treated. Pretty basic. That's a rule I've set for myself, right? Because it feels better than when I allowed myself to think, because again, it wasn't even allow myself to do. Like, I don't even want to do it anymore. But when I thought and then allowed myself to do whatever I wanted to do because I thought there was no consequence, that to me is where the rule is now. I don't do anything that I'll regret.
All right, question number 5. If I were to ask your best friend, what is the one thing they would say you need to work on the most, and why?
Well, now I'm gonna play politician a little bit and say the one thing we all need to work on. I'll make it an all thing instead of keep it in the eye, right? But to keep it in the eye, to be completely candid, discipline. And again, I just kind of see that as a human condition where discipline is lacking for us all in different areas, right? There's just different areas where we choose the comfort, the convenience, the pleasurable over the sacrifice, the rewarding, the long-term outcome, right? So, yeah, I mean, staying more on my exercises, right? And I realized this when I went into jail most recently. I do more working out there and working on myself than I do out here, exponentially, because there's nothing else to do. So that means I'm not as disciplined as I should be, or I go in and I want to buy chips and I want to buy cookies, whether it's once a week or whatever. Like, the fact that I have this impulse and compulsion and that I can't discipline it, this child within me that wants what it wants when it wants it, regardless of what the consequences are, right? That's what has to be worked on, and like I said, I just see that with all of us, discipline.
Always room for improvement.
Absolutely. I think it's meant that way. I suspect a lot of things, right? It's percentages, but I suspect that this realm is sort of I don't want to say purgatory, but an arena for folks to learn certain things, right? There's certain common themes. We all kind of come here to learn a few common themes, and one of them is discipline.
I like that you brought up purgatory. I think it's interesting because I was having a conversation with my brother the other day, and he mentioned that this is just a prison planet, blah blah blah, and I didn't have any, really a response for him at the time, but I was just thinking later that it is what you want it to be, right? So if it can be a prison, if that's what you think it is, or it can be a school that you learn from, and
Oh yeah, but yeah, it's like they say, it is what you make it in a sense, because again, and this kind of I've been touching on it a lot in different conversations. This idea on just a more pop culture level, because I like to bring it back sometimes just down to the mainstream. Kanye went up to TMZ and told everybody, in order to be a slave, you have to accept slavery. You have to think and act like a slave intergenerationally in order for it to be continued, right? It means you never stood up for yourself, you never fought back, you never tried to do anything other than conform and comply with slavery. And then he was told he was bad for saying that. But regardless of whether it's a prison planet or not, so like it's an if then statement, right? So this is a prison planet, so what are you going to do about it? If it's a prison planet, then you must do XYZ. But see, oftentimes people get into the victimhood consciousness where they focus on the effect rather than the cause they're going to be a part of, right? Like they say, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So when you're in fear and when you're in disempowerment, you're seeing all the things going wrong and how there's no way out. And now that relegates you to the experience of misery and suffering. If you say, well, I'm here to do the impossible to a certain degree, and I'm going to stand for what's true and what's right, regardless of anything, you've now touched a level of serenity and peace and freedom and dare I say self-righteousness, but not in a negative sense, right? Just in the sense of righteousness, right? How can a being ever truly feel good about himself and have self-esteem and be respect able if he doesn't have certain principles they're standing on, right? So for me, regardless of whether it's a prison planet or it's a doomed outcome, I still have all the time and space and opportunity within myself and without to create a being and an experience that I can respect and honor and say when I leave out of here that I did that, right? So to me, it's like there's an individual judgment, so to speak, and then a collective judgment. Because if everybody lives like that, this is over. If everybody doesn't live like that, I live like that. And when this is over, I have the freedom and ability to say I live like that in the face of everybody else who folded to the fear and disempowerment and said, well, I'll just do nothing because it's a prison planet. Again, we're back to faithful over fearful, because that fear is the only thing to really fear, because it keeps everybody disempowered and inactive and following and being led by misleaders.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned kind of standing in your power and doing that from a place of love. And I think that, in my opinion, that is something that would definitely follow you, I guess, follow you past death, if once you cross that other barrier, from my point of view. So I think that's yeah.
You have to suspect that there's some relationship to the cause and effect choices of what we do here, from where we came from to where we're going, that it's always, a choice-based sort of movement, but either way, we're here now. We're like, I always got to bring it back, because oftentimes people will say to me, well, what about the afterlife, heaven or hell? We're here now. We have an ability to choose here now. But I go back to what you just said, made me think of one of the great sort of quotes. I forget if it was scripture or Sun Tzu, because Sun Tzu was a war master, and he said, understand your enemy will cease to be your enemy. So now I just lost what I was actually going to say. But okay, live your life in a way to where even your enemies respect you, right? So that's one of the sort of rules I try to go by nowadays in all engagements, if you want to call them that. And I don't always hit the mark. There's times where they get to me a little bit, and I get a little bit sassy, so to speak. I get a little bit, but I never get too disrespectful. I will just tell the truth completely, to the point where I'll tell these agents sometimes, you're wearing a mask, you took the vaccine, you're engaging in genocide, and you're going to have to deal with those consequences. And they don't like that. But to me, that's still not really being disrespectful. I'm loving them and giving them truth that nobody else has really ever given them. So to me, anybody with any kind of sort of consciousness going in a certain direction is going to have to respect me, because I try to live my life where even my enemies, which I don't have enemies, but people who maybe see me as a rebel or a nonconformist, I try to still be respectable to those folks, because I don't think we're going to win this, quote unquote, win this or stop this dynamic, unless we create a bunch of versions of self that these folks have to look at and take notice, right? Again, the word is respectare. Respect means to take a second look at in Latin. We have to create a bunch of beings who these folks take a second look at and say, okay, these folks are not crazy. They're not fringe. They're not extremists. They're articulate, intelligent, eloquent, informed individuals who understand right from wrong and are willing to do right, if we would give them the ability to be free, which again, we all have to give each other the ability to be free. There's two types of people: those who want to be left alone and those who won't leave others alone.
Yeah, I think that quote was from Sun Tzu, if I'm not mistaken. But that reminds me of how, speaking of scripture, the other guy, Christ, said that he kept saying that the kingdom of God is at hand. And growing up, I was always thinking like, at hand, at hand. What does that mean? I always took it to mean like, oh, it's about to get here. Well, no, it means now, right? That's what you were talking about, is now. And I think that's the eternal now is such a weird concept to talk about, because once you talk about it, it passes. It's kind of like ineffable, this logos type idea, right? So, and I think that it's really important for people to kind of take that into consideration, not only like on every day, just because we should, and it's helpful too, but it's especially helpful, I would say, and tell me your thoughts on this. But if it's helpful to know your position, when, like, who you are and where you are when you get in front of a judge. Is that would you say a correct statement?
Yeah, I think that if nothing else, because again, in all of these communities, in any kind of community, I don't care any religion or any community, there's always going to be like fractured different sects and understanding different roads that people go down and they kind of group up. But ultimately, I think this is about a spiritual test first, right? I take everything from the spiritual first, and then I bring it down to the world, because you can't assume or presume that you're going to win any of this. You have to almost come, for me, from a place of, if you're down and out and you're killed or put in a jail cell for the rest of your life, can you substantiate why you're there? Because I can't substantiate being there for nonsense, street games and nonsense, doing harm to other people. But for me, taking power over what I am and my destiny, which is my lawful right under what we call God, universal law, and constitutional law, absolutely. If I have to die or go to a jail cell for that, I have to be willing to stand on everything in between that. Is it easy? Absolutely not. But that's the difference between bravery and cowardice, right? I'm not saying that I'm a brave man in that sense. I'm saying, by definition, that's the only thing that separates bravery and greatness, is when you feel fear, do you abandon your notion of right from wrong? Which the answer for most folks is yes, it seems. They do have a price. When they're put against the wall, right? A person's true colors are shown when their back's against the wall, or when you give them power. Well, we have two dynamics going on right now. We have a bunch of people who've been given power and a bunch of people whose back is against the wall. And we see that they're both opposites. It's two sides of the same coin. It's a coward filled with fear and disempowerment, insecurity, the need to control, dominate, and to try to run nature in their own image, rather than try to run nature based on universal law, right? Or comport themselves in nature based on the universal law. So everybody has the same outcome and consequence coming. It's just going to come looking a little bit differently.
All right. Question number 6. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
I would have to say what we're doing, here, what I do day to day, right? That's back to creating a self where I honor and stay true to myself. Is I only really engage in things, and that even kind of gets into relationships, with friends, with women, whatever. I only would be engaged with what turns me on, so to speak, spiritually, because again, I think that everything, who and what we are, is the non-being, and we use beingness. So all people, places, and things in the world have to be nourished or nurtured by that non-physical spiritual realm. Anything that's not is in resistance. It's not in a flow state. It's in a form of dis-ease, right? So yeah, kind of just self, knowledge of self, co-creation with self and others in the universe, watching that whole process, experiencing that whole process. Yeah, it's exciting for me.
Kind of reminiscent of the hero's journey type, what do you call it, motif or theme?
Yeah, I hear that a lot coming up. I did a couple of things with a lady named Beth Martins. That was her series. So yeah, I mean, there's these kind of archetypal, I guess, foundations throughout time, right? That's where you get back to the eternal truth. Different scriptures and texts talk about the same kind of truth, throughout the ages, that there is a space of co-creation and beingness that is beyond. It's a nirvana to a certain degree, right? I think a lot of these terms are misunderstood. They're oftentimes viewed to be like, there's no challenge, there's no, ups and downs, there's no, it's just completely devoid of all that. I don't think that's the case. I think it's just a space of peace and serenity, sort of like how I believe it was the Tao talks about creating an island within the self that no storm can overrun. So it's not that you're not going to have little ups and downs from time to time and have worldly issues. It's that when you take the being before who was rudderless on the ship, and now the being who has purpose and meaning in everything that they do, when times get tough, there's just an ability to cope on a different level, right? It's almost like a militant level of coping skill where nothing really gets to you. We're back to that stoicism idea. Nothing really shakes your unshakable core, because your core is aligned and united with a higher force, a higher sense of self and beingness and truth that pervades all time and space and individuality, right? And subjectivity. It's what we call God.
All right. Question number 7. What was the most embarrassing or humbling experience of your life?
I have to say the whole theme of drug addiction, not feeling like I would ever be able to love or be loved, that I was unattractive, undesirable, just complete disempowerment, dark night of the soul, so to speak. Um, yeah, heroin addiction, pill addiction, going into jails, being strip searched, them looking in your ass everywhere, every time you go somewhere. I don't mean to be crude or rude, but that's what goes on there, just, yeah. On one end, right? And then I'll give you kind of the other end is, since we had to go to these places so we can appreciate where we go from there, another humbling sort of other side to the coin is lately, seeing a whole bunch of people reaching out to me, wanting to help me out, be a part of what I'm doing. Definitely is cause for sort of reflection and pause, and maintaining a humble countenance, right? Because it's you can see that sort of extreme juxtaposition where there was a time where nobody wanted to deal with you and be with you at all, and probably for good reason in a lot of ways. And now a lot of folks see you as this mechanism or encapsulation of the idea of power and freedom and rights, and they want me to fight for them. Like, I've had people tell me I'm fighting for everyone else. I'm not fighting anybody. If anything, I'm dealing with my own internal struggles, right? I don't have any enemies or people I'm fighting from without, and I'm not doing anybody else's work for them, right? So I don't even remember the question at this point, and I don't even know if I answered.
Yeah, the question was the most embarrassing or humbling experience. And I
Oh,
can
yeah.
go ahead.
No, yeah, I mean, it's kind of both sides are a little bit embarrassing and humbling to me, because anytime somebody says, "Oh, you're so great," or, you're reduced to feeling like you're valueless, it's kind of, two sides of the same coin, so to speak.
Yeah, you had mentioned the whole being strip search thing. I just wanted to share with you that I too have had that experience. I shared it when I went through the 13 questions on episode 38, if anybody wants to check that out. But it was just real quickly, I was with my friend. I had just turned 18. He was 17. So I got taken to jail, and that whole thing happened to me. He got taken back home to his parents for cannabis. It was cannabis. It was possession. So, and it wasn't even like, a lot. I mean, we were in high school. So, like, what did we have on us? Like, maybe a gram, right? So, yeah, the whole strip search thing was just something that is totally degrading in the, like, your sense of humanity is just violated when that happens. So, yeah, I can relate to that. So, I just wanted to share that with you, I guess.
Yeah, no, there's definitely though a level of, again, if you allow these things, I go back to these great quotes of the crack is where the light enters, not to be, no pun intended, we're talking about squat and cough, but the crack is where the light enters, and the Tao is dark but also radiant because we let it be, right? So all these sort of dark, twisted, sort of demoralizing, dehumanizing, degrading experiences that are meant to break our spirit can actually fuel us, or just give us a sort of tempered character where we don't overstep our bounds. We get what we want when we operate in this space of understanding, hey, you know what? I'm not in control a lot of the time. I'm only in control of what I'm in control of. Like, we can all play and act up and act out, but these folks got the guns, the power, whatever. I'm not going to fight it out with them on the side of the road, because it's not going to please me or them to win or lose. I'm not in this for that, right? That's the lowest state of being. So yeah, I guess let's go to the next one.
Right.
Yeah, go on.
What is your greatest fear, and how did you overcome it, if you have?
Well, I guess it's all kind of on the same uh, theme. My well, couple greatest, right? I guess every question is going to be really, it's supposed to be one thing, but I make it three or four things. Uh, Greatest fears, obviously early on in my life, and even, I guess as time goes on, and we'll call this the category of most people, the fear of not being liked or accepted for being truly yourself, right? And the way I got over that was obviously, like the cliche says, to be more authentic, right? Because that's where the word confidence comes in. The more that we confide in others and show other people who and what we really are and make no apologies, the more we come to realize and understand it's not going to be so bad. It's going to be okay, right? What we come to really find out is not only are we accepted, but people really honor us and appreciate that, because it's a very rare quality, it seems, in the world, is authenticity. So, that was up there, sort of the superficial, shallow aspect of biggest fears. Um, One of the other biggest fears, obviously, right? Like I talk about all the time, and I kind of use humor as a coping mechanism, but slavery, bondage, slavery, genocide. I try to let my fears motivate me in a positive way towards a sense of faith, right? So if fear is experienced, I try to let it be a propeller rather than a paralyzer. Um, but yeah, obviously, with everything we see going on, the loss of rights, loss of freedom, loss of life, loss of structure, but again, I guess a lot of this is needed. So within a lot of the fears and what we see as problems are actually their own solutions, because there's a bigger process at play here.
I love that you brought up authenticity, being more authentic and confident in yourself, and it's just falls way too perfectly into the whole. Well, there used to be this figure of speech called, when someone's being fake or whatever. It's like they're putting on a mask, right? They're wearing a mask, and now we actually have these masks, and it's like don't wear, not wearing a mask. Like, are you being authentic? It's just too many connections there. I can't put it all together in my brain right now, but
Oh, there's absolutely a synchronicity throughout creation where they talk about as above, so below, as within, so without. We're literally manifesting on all levels based on whom, what we are, what we've accepted, and what we've denied. Even the word person and persona in Latin means a mask wearer. So all of these codes, statutes, policies, corporate fascist rule, right? The merger of state and corporate powers is fascism. So our government has been supplanted by a fascistic rule, a merger of state and corporate powers, where the law is no longer being abided by, right? There's all these contracts and tacit agreements and basically coerced, duressive, if that's a word, duress-based sort of action, where we're forced into these agreements where we, have to experience loss, injury, or harm. All this stuff is under the idea of personage, right? Rather than the people. They'll even say, like they did in my paperwork and everyone's paperwork, this is the people versus all capital letter name. That's your person, right? That's your mask that you're expected to be summoned to court and appear as. We're summoning the person. We don't want the man or the woman. We want the person. And then you show up and they apply a bunch of rules to you because, again, you're a mask wearer. You're not the real. You're not the authentic. You're not the genuine. You're not from the earth. Man and land are synonymous. So the living being who was made from the earth and will return to the earth is subject to natural law, right? And then man wants to come in and subvert natural law for man-made laws and do it under the idea of personage, the all capital letters corruption, second version of you, where they're going to apply corporate policies and rules to you and subvert natural law and constitutional law. And again, they did this all with our cooperation, another commercial term, operation. Thank you for cooperating with us, they'll say. because it's all a business transaction. And the more we keep going along to get along because we keep getting a check and everything seems to be okay, we give up the original, now we're completely in the hands of the deceiver and the corruption and the downfall, and now you have people really getting it. Ironically, that's what needed to happen, right? All the mask wearers had to be really, like you said, put into a mask and muzzled and be seen as voiceless, because that's what that archetype is about. You're voiceless. So it's an identity taker, faceless, voiceless, powerless. And Shaitan asks you now, is this what you want? And a lot of people say, yeah, they can't get enough of it. They're out in the middle of nowhere with the mask on. That's how low that they've gotten with their level of self-knowledge and self-care, that they'll destroy themselves and each other in ignorance of the natural law. Or they just can't perceive of it, right? They just never have researched for the resource, right? Back to source consciousness and source understanding what's supernatural. They don't understand supernatural. They understand culture, what's been overlaid, what they've been raised up in with the TV, the device. We keep looking at all these words and we keep mapping out a reality where we understand. We don't need drugs and hallucinations anymore because they have a whole cult that has overlaid a reality with lights, colors, sound, symbols, smoke, and mirrors, and everybody's involved in a mass hallucination. Drugs needed.
Yeah. So I love how you brought up personage, the term person, right? So I love words, I love etymology, I love breaking them down. So I'm curious, citizen, is it a good thing to be a citizen?
I don't think that it's inherently a good or bad thing. I think there's different categories, right? If we're playing in their game, they'll say there's like the corporate citizen of the United States, where it's written as a corporation. So it basically means like what they call an inhabitant of a municipality, is what Mr. Alphonse will tell me. But there's different ways of describing it, right? And there's the corporate personage, where you identify with a privileged class, what they call it, a class of beings who gets privileges and benefits from the government. That's where Social Security comes in and all these other systems that everybody begs for, stimulus. So they basically take your rights under corporate citizenship because you're a privileged class. And then there's a protected class, which is a state citizen, right? Now, this is my sort of basic understanding of how this all works. So when we talk about the nationals, right, American nationals, folks who were born on this land and remain on the land as far as their status, they're a protected class of beings. That's government in these municipalities, right? Because all government at a certain point was reduced to corporate entities as their status. So they're all just corporations, right? They're upholding statute, policies, and codes, which the Declaration of Independence says is only given the force of law through the consent of the governed. So this is all basically corporations and agreements that we enter into in order to get benefits and privileges, in which case we become the corporate citizen, right? So now we have duties, obligations, and responsibilities to these folks who are the overseers. When we retain our natural rights based on, again, there's 2 states in every state, the state of Colorado, Colorado State. There's 2 senators, I believe, in every state. So there's somebody who's running the side of the land. There's someone who's running the corporate side, right? So in the state of Colorado they want you in a state of being, right? Like if I say I'm in a state of something, it means you've changed the beingness. It's the corporate capacity. Then there's state of Colorado. There's Colorado State and state of Colorado. The state of is the corporate capacity. Colorado State is on the land, right? So when you're a man on the land, you're a national, you're a state citizen. When you're a person, you're not on the land, you have benefits and privileges. You also have duties and obligations. And yeah, you're considered to be a corporate citizen. So I think that it's just about how we're using the word, right? A being could be a citizen of a family, or a certain society. Just basically means, to my understanding, what you're sort of beholden to, So you could, like they could classify me as a state citizen. I'm a protected class of being. I'm a man who has rights directly from God, and any being who's part of a corporation who tries to apply statutes and policies to me without a contract is in violation, right, of the rights from God. So it's the understanding of the original versus the corruption once again, right? Most people are in the corruption, they're of it. They've taken their birth certificate down to the DMV. The birth certificate says, don't use this as ID. And we take it right on down like a goofy to the DMV and use it as ID. You just made joinder with your state beingness and another corporation with duties and obligations and responsibilities. So when they stop you, what's the first thing they're going to ask? License, registration. They want to know that you got all the contracts, so they got jurisdiction to put hands on you and to apply this code to you, right? A lot of them don't even know this, but that's what the training is all meant for, right? They don't even know what they're trained to do, which is to establish contract. Because again, the Declaration of Independence says that all interactions here, and I'm paraphrasing, are voluntary. Anything that you want to force anyone to compel has to be through contract. So there has to be loss, injury, and harm, or a contract where someone owes a debt, right? This is where we get into bondage in court, where they'll let you out like they did with me with a $1 bond if you just sign, which I don't sign. But this is what we call bondage, right? Where they're claiming I have to now perform for you because you wrote stuff down on paper and I signed it. You call it a bond. You're putting me in slavery and bondage, right? There's no loss, injury, or harm. There's no plaintiff. There's nobody on the other side. There's the people of the state of versus the all capital letter person, right? So they're claiming to be the ones with all the rights, and they're saying we have duties and obligations. It was supposed to be the other way around. Man has all the rights. We're the we, the people. They're the agents, right? Prosecutors, judges, they're the persons. So they flipped the game, right? That's what we call flipping the script on a street level. They flipped the script. So now they have all the rights and abilities. They're the people of the state of when they're agents. And we're now the personage, right? We're the agents of some sort of principle, which they are claiming is government and whoever created that all capital letters name because we showed up when we were summoned. And we keep signing them papers. That's the other thing. We keep signing all them papers. How many people come in every day, answer for that name, and then they hand them a paper and they sign their life away. And what does it say on that paper? I, as the all capital letter name, agree that I, as the man, capital small letter name, am bonded as a surety, right? So you're basically saying I'm now entering into bondage and slavery consensually, you know? And when we don't do that in a lot of places, they just go ahead anyway. That's how far down it's gotten. We know the game and we don't willingly comply, and they just go ahead and steal our property like they did to me recently anyway and continue on.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I kind of like that. It really points out just, what the prisons really are. Paper, agreements, ideas, thoughts, transcribed down are, today's chains. It's, outside of the prison system, it's an all-encompassing prison system.
Yeah, but it's always been that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the word, again, justification means create a right that doesn't exist. These folks are authoritarianisms, right? The word is authoritarianist. The word is authority. So whoever writes it down, the author, is now the creator of law. They want to be God on earth. They're not interested in universal law and whatever has their own morality and the understanding of objective logic and do no harm to others. They're going to tell you right from wrong, and it may change week to week. But the idea is government, again, has a root meaning in Latin. It means mind control. Gubernare mente, to govern the mind, to control the mind. So all conditions in this world start in the mind and heart. And if you want order, right, which again, all these concepts are put forth, if you want order and safety, you have to govern the minds and hearts of all the men and women out there who can't govern themselves. You see, and a lot of the reason that this stuff continues is because in actuality, most folks can't govern themselves. They don't know objectively right from wrong, and they need other people to seemingly tell them. The mask and vaccine is evidence of such. So now we have to ask who's really at fault here, because again, like the founder said, the people get the government that they deserve. A nation of sheep will be ruled by wolves.
To your point of people, that some people need that, and the conditioning that has really gone on, kind of just an anecdote quickly. I was at the post office the other day and I was about to walk in the door, and you walk in the door of the post office and you're in this little tiny room, and there's a door that you can go into the lobby to like stand in line, or you can go through the other door to your other side and go to the windows where the cashiers are. And there's a lady right inside the doorway, right when I walk in. She's not going through either of the doors to the lobby or the cashier's place. She's just standing in this room. And I walk in the little tiny room and I'm standing there behind her. And then she turns around and asks me if we're allowed to go in. And so she's what? You're going to ask a complete stranger for permission to conduct your business at a place that, obviously you need to be here, right? Of course, go in. It's mind blowing.
But that's back to that idea of common sense being uncommon, right? Part of the common sense is an ability to just get oneself through their life without having to be told what's right from wrong. And again, we've just been so domesticated, like wolves being taken into the house, or house slaves, essentially. We've been domesticated. We don't know how to produce or how to create or co-create or exist within the natural realm anymore. All we know is this overlaid order following tendency of authoritarianism. Everywhere you go, there's a sign, a light, an arrow, an advisement, a mandate. None of these things are compulsory. They will be at some point where you'll have no option, but that's only because we for so long made it preferable. Oh, well, we need all this to create safety and order. What would we do out here if everyone wasn't told how fast to take their property from point A to point B? What would we do if everybody wasn't backed by a multi-million, billion-dollar corporation called insurance, where everybody was forced by the state into contract to pay these insurance companies for stuff they haven't used yet? And then they'll tell me I'm the dangerous rebel crazy person because I don't want to pay into something I haven't used. If I cause damage and it's deemed to be my fault, I will compensate you at whatever level I can that doesn't cause me harm. I'm sorry that in a world of dangerous freedom, you can't be compensated right now, no risk, immediately. This is what everybody wants. They want guarantees in a world of no guarantees. So guess who comes in to fill that void? Shaitan and his deceptions. I'm going to recreate the world and everything in it and make it look and feel real safe. And it works to a degree till it doesn't. And when it doesn't, the results are catastrophic. So now we have all these bubbles created because everybody wants to remake the world to be comfortable, convenient, no risk, safety, but also have their personal choice. And now we're seeing they're even giving up their personal choice to be regulated because the experts deem it to be so, right? You're not an expert. You're just a lowly troglodyte, from the mainstream population. And people have actually bought into that. They believe in their lack of self-respect, and they might be right on the average accord. Most people don't seem to understand anything, how politics works, religion, medical system, biology, psychology. The average person doesn't seem to understand anything. All they know is go get some money and throw some money at the problem, and somebody else is going to solve what you created. They're going to go get a lawyer to represent them. They're going to get a doctor to keep them healthy. They're going to get some guy in some regalia to show them God. Just complete lack of responsibility and accountability as a self in the world because we lack self-knowledge and self-empowerment. We're exactly like the sheep being yapped at by the dog. Fear runs our whole life right into the shearing pen because we think in group consciousness. The goat doesn't do that, right? And then they'll say right away, oh, Paulie's evil. He's off on a Masonic jag. He just compared the sheep with the goats. Yeah, they have different qualities. These understandings are understandings that are eternal. They don't have to inherently be good or bad.
So I've noticed that you've used a certain term twice now, shaitan, and I wanted to bring this up because I'm a big fan of vocabulary, and I think the way that I think we're thinking of the same thing, but the way I've seen it written, it's a Hebrew word, and it's ha-satan, like ha-shatan, like H-A dash.
Yeah.
It's stumbling block is what it translates to, right? Is that, am I correct?
That's the thing. There's different sort of understandings of what this term is, but again, it's just sort of an illustration of a general human condition where we get in our own way. I mean, one of the ways to look at it is just dysfunctional ego. where whether we're alone or we're in groups, we have an idea of the way things should be or the way they shouldn't be, and we want to control and dominate all of reality rather than master ourselves in order to be able to cope with reality on reality's terms, right? So everybody's in their own little world trying to remake the world based on what they want and don't want to be true, and every relationship conforms to that, and it's all these hidden societal polite rules. But again, I go back to the quotes, the occultists all throughout history. The Rolling Stones is a good example. Use all that well-learned politesse while I lay your soul to waste. I love that quote, and I come back to it time and time again because they're trying to illustrate who and what is this Lucifer, this Shaitan? What is the nature of the game? And is it really the evil one, or is it our best teacher? Because it, he, she, it, whatever, the archetype didn't do anything. It was just there when we did it all to ourselves and each other, right? So it's just sort of it seems to be a local and non-local mechanism that's just part of the human condition eternally, right? And then there's true care, there's true self, which says, no, I'm not going to play favorites. I'm not going to remake the world and what I want and don't want to be true. I'm going to search for what is true, and I'm going to live and create from that space. And I'm going to surrender all that otherworldly nonsense, right? In the world, but not of it.
All right. Question number 9. What is your single greatest driving force in life, and how do you further it?
I think that's pretty evident at this point. Whatever you believe the animating force is, consciousness and awareness, the electricity that drives my heart. There's very few things that I'm motivated or animated or care about. But if there was one, it'd be that spirituality, yearning for truth and freedom and the ability to choose my own destiny, in a world that from day one, whether it's parents, teachers, authoritarians in all forms, want to tell me who and what I am, what I will do and not do, who I will be and who I will not be. This is an old story. We're not so different, you and I, as they say, right? This is to me, again, a human condition, a commonality. It's what we're all doing when we have these discussions. It's all oneself that is researching for the resource, and the resource is an understanding of self that we're here to choose our destiny and to not abdicate our power and responsibility over to demons, if you want to call it that, right? To deceivers and misleaders, because we don't know ourselves or our fear is too big, right? We have to take our power back or just stop giving it away. So that animating contest of liberty, as one of the founders said, is what drives me at this point.
I love that quote. Do you know which one? Animating Contest of Liberty? Do you know which founder?
Patrick Henry.
Speaking of founders, the other day I saw this short little video that the average age of the founders, that group of the founding fathers, was 44. But when you break down like the actual, look at the individuals, right? There were a few outliers, like Jefferson was like super old, right? He was like 70 something, and then there was some other guy that was kind of old. But the majority of these guys were, late 20s, early 30s. There was one of them, I think. It doesn't matter, but the average age was 44. Like, so these were like, I just thought it was interesting that these are relatively young individuals, and at the founding of this country a few hundred years ago or whatever, like, I don't know what I was doing in my I do know what I was doing in my younger 20s, but I just, I wasn't fighting the King of England or whatever, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. One of the things, I believe it was Terence McKenna, to keep on the same sort of theme, brought up was the neotenization of culture, where men and women are being reduced in their capacity. They're almost becoming less mature, right? They're going later and later into life without actually experiencing these coming of age sort of maturation processes, right? And again, I think a big reason, a causality for that, is comfort and convenience has been elevated over genuine experience. So we have this idea of adversity makes men, prosperity makes monsters. And then we have this Hopi prophecy idea of weak men create hard times create strong men create good times create weak men. We're at that part of the cycle where strong men in the past have created good, prosperous, free times, and now we've all become weak. That's what this all really is we're having to re-find ourselves and our footing and our principles, because we become very dumbed down, disempowered, and weak because we've had it too good for too long, right? A lot of people have been living high on the hog on credit and all types of different systems and institutions, and having the abilities and rights to do things that, there's consequences to all of it, right? All the cause and effect choices, dealing with other countries, the resources, the way we do business, the outsourcing, all these little markers throughout the last, 100 years. Now it's time to pay the piper, so to speak. But again, it's part of that idea, that cycle, where if you want a birthing of a new consciousness of strong and righteous and principled individuals where we can inherit a kingdom of heaven, we're going to have to go through this cycle, right?
Question number 10. Who were or are your role models and why?
I don't really have what I would call role models, but in order to be fair, because again, I'll sit there and there's probably a ton of people who have influenced me throughout my life, but generally it would be any man or woman who can communicate the eternal truth that all of us seem to have come to an understanding of, at least true enough when we really look and put it to the test. Any being who is uncovering different layers of truth, even on the sort of more superficial layers, a lot of the political, secret society, and again, there's different sides to this. I understand there's positive teachings, and then there's, the dark occultists. But anybody who is putting the truth forefront in what they're creating and communicating would be somebody who I would respect, or be inspired by. Especially, because I'm a word person. So especially people who are articulate and eloquent and, like those books I mentioned earlier, those would be the type of folks who would inspire me, or, I would respect, or if someone would say, look up to.
Yeah, and it's important to. I'm not just saying that. I'm not saying this just to you, just in general. But I think that it's just to emphasize that it's important to support those people when you do find them and they resonate with you, and the different layers of truth are being uncovered. Supporting independent content creators. That you resonate with is integral, but it's important to make sure that it continues, because in my opinion, communicating eternal truths and uncovering different layers of said truth is important. So if you can support your favorite content creator by sharing their content, is really, from my point of view, the most efficacious way to support is by spreading the word. So just wanted to drop that in there real quick.
Well, it's a core tenet of life. Water the gardens that you want to grow, So, you see the seeds, fertilize them.
Absolutely. And also too, there's this thing of like, I'll go back to the cliche, the world is full of good and righteous people. If you can't find one, be one. Even if it's not on the level of supporting, right? Because there's always that level of people giving their time, energy, attention, and resources, different people and causes. But we have to be, again, the cliche, be the change that you want to see. It's so simple. So if everybody's a shill, right? Because this is a new thing nowadays. Everybody's a shill. Everybody's a Mason. And if you're a Mason, you're automatically bad because they don't understand the teachings originally of Freemasonry, even if what it's become is all bad, right? There's originally, again, a common core. We'll use their language, common core. See, it's always a corruption of something true. there's a common core teaching throughout all of these institutions and teachings. Whether or not man and woman are following them at this time is a different story. So if you see better and know better, then be better and create better. And then you can stop focusing on everybody else and everything else.
Question number 11. What quality do you most admire in a woman?
I would say the same quality that I would admire in a man, because I do believe on the highest level we are oneself. So if we're talking about the non-physical, choice-based sort of aspect of self, same things I would admire in any being. Noble qualities, righteous qualities. Are they trustworthy? Are they honorable? Are they open and honest and authentic in their communication and expression? Do they have a sense of self that is higher than the everyday sort of interpersonal drama and subjectivity? Do they have an objective sense of self and truth and what's right?
Question
Willing
number
to act on that, right? I cut you off there, but obviously the most important part, willing to act on it, because you can have all those sensibilities and not act on it. So obviously it's admirable whenever we see man or woman acting out these qualities that other people may sell their soul to avoid having to take on the responsibility of.
There is something to say about the willing to act part, because there's a difference between desiring something and then taking the intention towards that object or towards that whatever goal you have, right? So I like that you pointed that out.
Absolutely. Like they say, wisdom is knowledge put into action. You can have knowledge of good and evil, so to speak, but where the game is won and lost, in quotes, is in the action part of it, right? Because anybody can ride the line and know better, but you have to do better to make a change in the world and in yourself, right? Because again, a lot of people who may know better, they're very angry people if they're not doing better, because they know better but won't do better. So they're settling less for themselves and others, right? So there's always that level of to be courageous or to be brave, if you want to call it those words, which they have like this feeling attached to them. You have to move into that space of willful action, righteous action.
I love that you brought up the wisdom. That's something I talk about all the time, is applied wisdom or applicable wisdom. It's something that I went into. I don't know if you know a whole lot of background on the show, but I wasn't involved in the genesis of it. But when I got involved, I really wanted to emphasize applicable wisdom. What are tangible pieces of advice people can take away from the show and apply to their own lives. And I think, I hope that's what 13 Questions is doing. So it just makes me happy that you brought that up. And what was that equation that you said? Knowledge equals, because I tried to quote that in my episode and I couldn't come up with it.
Knowledge put into action is wisdom, right? Wisdom is knowledge put into action.
All right. Question number 12. What is the most courageous thing you have ever done or seen in your life?
Same kind of theme, same kind of rap, doesn't really change much. Most courageous thing that I've done or seen is standing up for my rights, and not really, because again, a lot of this is about my freedom with people. These are my rights, standing up for rights in general, what's right. Because again, the opposite of what's wrong is what's right. So we have a right to do anything that's not wrong. And what's wrong is whatever causes loss, injury, or harm, or is a breaking of our word. So for me, ironically, in a world that is evil, EVIL is just live backwards. In a world that lives backwards, most courageous thing anybody could do is stand up for what's true and what's right, because the whole world operates on wrong. So yeah, the most courageous thing I've done and most courageous thing I've seen done is, what else is there? You're going to pull a gun on somebody in the street and play little boy games? I mean, listen, I understand there's a place for that too in certain societies and within certain understandings and agreements. Because again, we're back to contract law and agreements. In certain societies, people make agreements that if they do certain behaviors, they get certain consequences. when we're in the purview of natural law and universal law and supposed civilized society, right? Everything is based on honorability, even in that world, right? That's what I love about this whole thing is I've taken it full circle in my understanding of it. Going back to the original is in the supposed underworld and in the supposed civilized world, the whole unifying force was supposed to be a code of ethics, a code of honor, right? Now, what we agree on that to be is based again on culture and who's making up the rules, but the thread is still the same, right? That honor and principles have to be stuck to. So that's the most courageous thing anybody could do at any time in history in any society is stick to their principles and honor their code, right? Versus some code of somebody who's trying to tell you how to think and how to feel and who you're going to be.
All right. Here is the capstone question, if you will. Question 13. What does it mean to be a man in today's world?
Well, see, it's interesting the synchronicity of how the questions sort of fold into each other because we have this juxtaposition of masculinity, being put forth, projected strength of, bravado and ego and dysfunction, control, dominator archetype. And then you have this slave think sort of corporate male on the other side of the coin, right? But I think there's a middle ground in the sense of service to the truth, service to, again, we're back to principles and what's right, care. So ironically, what it means to be a man really is to get in touch with that feminine aspect of consciousness, right? Or at least start there. We're back to now square one. We take it full circle. Care. For a man to be truly a man and stand for anything that's worth standing for, you have to care, right? The Tao says, do not live or work with men who don't care. The majority of folks who seem real powerful, they seem real in charge and real in control. They don't care. The folks who seem real slaved up and real emasculated, they don't care. So we have common bonds and common themes on all sides of how we get to where we get to. So, for me, it's becoming that holistic being, which first and foremost is a heart-based, caring individual who cares about what's true and what's right. And then you align the mind and the heart, right? Thoughts and emotions with your actions. And that's sacred trinity, from my understanding. So, and then we can give kind of even Mark Passio a shout out because he does a lot of great sort of communicating about these understandings in that subject. It can be looked at as mysticism, but it's really just, again, the common sense that we all lack. Ubiquitously, the idea of common sense is uncommon. This idea that, of course, a man is principled and ethical and honorable, and respectable. Because if not, he can't have anything. Can't have a business. If you're not minding your own business, you can't mind your business. If you're involved in busyness, you're not involved in self-work. You're not involved in self-work, your women, your children, other men can't really love you, can't really respect you, and you won't really love them or respect them. That's where we get into love able, right? Many folks nowadays, men especially, who are very powerful in society, are not love able. They're not able to give and receive love on a certain level because they've had to cordon off the part of themselves that cares, right? The feminine aspect of consciousness, heart-based consciousness of care, because to become successful and powerful and resourceful in the corporate world, right? Again, we're back to the fascistic corporate world. You have to not care, right? It's seen as a strength. Oftentimes our greatest strength in the world is really our greatest weakness. When you get into it with people, oftentimes they're in control, they're powerful, they'll tell you, I don't care, and they see that as a strength. But I believe it's the biggest weakness in society, and it's showing itself on all levels. A lack of true care for something that is beyond the materialistic, the 5 cents. And the same thing, I could say the same thing. If you ask me, what does it mean to be a real man? Because I think you said man, you didn't say woman, man or woman, but it's the same thing on both sides, right? Same way I answered that earlier question. That doesn't change. The same thing it means to be a real man is the same thing it means to be a real woman. Principles.
I love that you emphasized care, and you also pointed out that aligning the heart and the mind is kind of a prerequisite for that. And then, because that just goes back to the whole gratitude thing that we were talking about earlier. So, awesome answer, and that also made me, the whole care thing made me think of the what's that? The weird secret society meeting with the owl, the cremation of care. What is that? Bohemian Grove?
Molech.
Yeah. Think about that for a sec.
Bohemian Grove. But see, there you go. And that's a perfect, if you look, right, you'll find the connections. And then I believe this theory that I'm communicating to you, it holds water because, again, a great idea is one where it fits anywhere that you put it, right? A lot of people have a lot of ideas that they claim are true. Can you put it anywhere and make it fit, right? But when you have an understanding that's tried and true, it fits wherever you put it. So just that idea right there, that these folks who are, if you were to say evil or they're living backwards, they're caught up in some kind of compulsion, some kind of impulse to do certain behaviors that we look at as lower, right? And what's their main ritual? The cremation of care. We're going to burn our cares away so we can continue to operate in the world however we want without consequence, because from their angle, care is their biggest impediment. You see how it works? From my angle, fear is my biggest impediment because care is my biggest strength. But from a person who operates from a different perspective, care is, because again, care can have two sides to it from their perspective, right? You care too much about what someone else thinks or even what you think if you're doubting yourself, and it's going to stop you from progress and success, right? But, again, oftentimes these emotions that are, from the male ego perspective, they're seen as weaker, lesser states, right? Because there's vulnerability there, right? So it's really just about balance and tempering with understanding that this stuff all has a function. There's a reason we care. There's a reason we feel guilty, is to direct us to right action. These folks don't want that to be a part of creation. They want a guilt-free lifestyle so they can rise in power and not have to feel the guilt of their natural care, right? So rather than conform themselves to natural law and what their beingness is telling them, oh, you feel guilty, you care, stop doing that. No, they want to continue to do what they've always done to get what they've always got, and they want to avoid the consequences, right? So we're back to lack of accountability and responsibility. Everybody thinks they're going to do whatever they want to do on all sides, give orders, follow orders, hurt people, be hurt, and think that it's not going to degrade the whole body politic. Because again, the value of human life and consciousness and awareness in what we're doing here, when it ceases to be such in the preponderance of people's mind and heart, that's when it all goes away. And we're seeing it now, right? And now the force is coming in right on time to get rid of everybody because it's verified, whatever it is, however it works, it's verified. Hey, yous all don't care no more, right? Yous all have shown the universe and everything in it. You don't care no more. You're going to take the kids out. You're going to harm the innocent. So we're going to bring it all in on you. We create and manifest what we put our time, energy, attention, and resources on. That's what worship is. So when you worship the evil force, it comes in full force and it says, you wanted me. Now I'm here and I'm going to show you what I do best. Right. And then maybe people need that to learn from it. Right. I always have to take that attitude. For people to be truly good, like myself in my own walk individually, collectively, for people to truly do good, they first have to, like the phoenix, crash and burn to rise higher. Right. It seems a lot of folks have to do that individually and on a collective scale. So we're seeing right now a collective self-destruction so that these beings can wash away the impurities and the false and be rebuilt, in a new image, hopefully of a most high consciousness and not of leaders of a cult, right? Which again, we're always in the hanging in the balance, it seems, based on our choices of self-work and collective work. So we're always kind of, will we serve the most high consciousness and conform to that? Or will we listen to our fear and go with the leaders of this world, the God of this world, and conform to that? And we see by the fruits you will know them, right? For those with real discernment, we don't need to be shown or told anything more. We see by the fruits you will know them. We see what one side gets and what the other side gets.
Well, Paul, this has been an amazing conversation. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and spending some time with us. I feel like I made a new friend. Like, it's great. I've been looking forward to this interview since we set it up. So,
yeah, I like the format, man. It's interesting. It's a cool. It does something to you, right? It moves you a little bit one way or the other. So, I like that.
Well, thank you. That's what we try to do. Adam, do you have any closing thoughts?
Oh, no, just, like Bill said, everything there with the addition of incredibly impressed with your deconstruction of words and their meanings. Haven't had so many rediscoveries of the language in many a year. So thank you for that, sir. I got a, half dozen new double words under my belt.
Yeah, that green language. It's always interesting. We use these words day in and day out, and it never dawns on us, like they say, right? To use one of the terms, it never dawns on us, the light, the connection is made that, oh, wow, look at the root of these words. My one lately is soul, S-O-L, and where that's used and everything, like the word solitude. They'll say, oh, this guy's out in the forest, he's in solitude. Yeah, if I want to keep my light in a certain place, I have to be in soul, sun, right? Solitude, right? So I'm not in loneliness, I'm in solitude. I got to keep my light, in a certain place, a certain way.
Well, thank you again, Paul. And can you please let the listeners know where to find you, how to get in contact with you, etc.?
Well, like I just said, if you're going to try to find me, you got to come out to the forest at this point. But you want to find me in the metaverse, right? We're concurrent now. We're in the metaverse. When you put on the goggles, right, it really just sink into the new world order. We won't down on them, but if you want to find me in the digital realm and then connect with me through email or whatever, I do have, like I said, an email, consciousness.is.rising@gmail.com. I got my YouTube, of course, Paul Unslaved. Yeah, pretty much any social media, if I'm going to be on there, you want to call it that, or anti-social media. If you want to find me on there, it's going to be under Paul Unslaved, right? So just look for that. If it's there, reach out and, keep it cordial and respectful and courteous, right? But yeah, I'm there.
I wanna hawani. I wanna hawani. Yo what? 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 I wanna hawani. I wanna hawani. Yo what?
Why is one man rich and another man poor? Why we ain't satisfied? Why we gotta have more? Why your suicide rates on the rest so high? Why I tell you the truth but you say don't lie? Why is being a good father at an all-time low? Why is it acceptable? Yo, why? I don't know. Why she blame him and he blame her? It's useless. Ask yourself this question. Why you making excuses? Why do parents gotta bury their kids? Why we text and drive, not caring how scary it is? Why it's so hard to forgive and leave the past behind? And if you did, then that's divine. Why don't you help your brother when you see him fall? Why do we act like God don't see it all? Why do we call them black, them white, them Asians and use labels? Now that's racism.
I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, why? I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, why? I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, why? I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo,
Why is
why?
there innocent people locked up for life, while some people can't say nothing nice? Why do we always gotta question what all of it means? And why won't you follow your dreams? Tell me why. The night when you took my dad, why'd you let me see my grandpa cry? And tell me why. And why do you choose to hide, even though you was born to fly? And tell me why. And why don't we turn from all the hate? And why don't we learn from all mistakes? Why do I keep on wrecking these fat beats? And teachers don't make more than professional athletes? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why?
I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, why? I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, why? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, why? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, why?
This should be considered entertainment and not therapy. We hope you benefit from our resources available at 13questionspodcast.com. Thank you for listening.